first song, A Sunbeam. Jesus wants me for a sunbeam to shine for him each day. In every way I do please him, at home as full of day. A sunbeam, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, a sunbeam, a sunbeam. I'll be a sunbeam for him. I will ask Jesus to help me to keep my heart from sin, ever reflecting his goodness and always shine for him. A sunbeam, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, a sunbeam, a sunbeam. I'll be a sunbeam for him. I would ask Jesus to help me to keep my heart from sin, ever reflecting his goodness and always shine for him. A sunbeam, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, a sunbeam, a sunbeam. I'll be a sunbeam for him. All right, this one's Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. God bless you and keep you. Happy birthday to you. Birthday greetings today. May God bless you, we pray. Live for Jesus, dear scholar. May He guide you always. Happy birthday to you. Hope you will not do. Born again means salvation. How many have you? In the verse, Jesus answered and said to him, Verily, verily, I say to you, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. John 3:3. And is there anyone? Rachel? Lauren. All right, thanks for writing out Lauren. Jana, could you take Lauren? Welcome, Lauren. Welcome to our Sunday school. We're so glad you're here. And we hope you're with us today. God's own word to hear. Learn with us of Jesus' love. Out from heaven he came. Died to save us, lives to keep us. Praise his holy name. This
29, verse 11. Matthew 3:7. But when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to his baptism, he said to them, Brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Matthew 3:7. Micah 3:8. But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah 6:8.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. 16:36. Bendito sea el nombre de Jehová. Job menudo. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job 1:1. Never be trouble for it. Don't forget. That heart. What's favorite? 7. And the Lord did not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance. The Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. Heart of the maid. Over 9. 14.
Where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. And now Caleb's going to come and read the rest of the chapter.
Verse 9. The angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for a multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man, his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of the Lord, who spoke to her, You are the God who sees. For she said, Have I also here seen him who sees me? Therefore the well was called Bir Lashai Roy. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram.
Would be Genesis 21. These are connective themes. They're not necessarily in sequential order, but is the birth of Ishmael and the birth of Isaac. So in 21 it says this, Then the Lord took note of Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, and at the appointed time which God had spoken to him. So Abraham called his son who was born to him, who Sarah bore to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born for him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. Therefore she said to Abraham, Drive out this maid and her son, for this son of the maid shall not be an heir with my son Isaac. And the matter greatly distressed Abraham because of his son. And God said to Abraham, Do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you to do, listen to her. For through Isaac your descendants shall be named. And of the son of the maid, I will make a nation also, because he is your descendant. So Abraham rose early in the morning, took bread and a skin of water, and gave them to Hagar, and put them on her shoulder, and gave her the boy, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water in the skin was used up, and she left the boy under one of the bushes. And when the water in the skin was used up, she left the boy under the bushes, and she went and sat opposite him about a bow shot away. For she said, "Do not let me see the boy die." And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the lad crying, and the angel of the Lord called to Hagar from heaven and said, "What is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him by the hand, and I will make a great nation of him." And God opened up her eyes, and when she saw the well of water, she went and filled the skin up with water and gave the lad a drink. God was with the lad, and he grew. And he lived in the wilderness and became an archer. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran. And his mother took a wife from him from the land of Egypt. In Galatians, this actually is applied to the Christian life, or to a free woman and being in slavery, but the son of the bondwoman and the son of promise. But this is a real life event. And if you haven't had the time to actually look through the life of Abraham, his life is very interesting. He's called the man of faith, but he's an example, so says Hebrews 6, for those who would live after faith. The writer of Hebrews says this to encourage the believers. He says, "Be imitators of these people. Be imitators of these men of faith, these women of faith. Because through faith and patience, they inherited the promises." And so when God promises something to us, does he promise things to us today? Absolutely, right? These weren't just for these individuals centuries ago, thousands of years ago. No, he has promises to us. How do we obtain the promises? Through patience and through faith, right? So be imitators. So Abraham, or I'd like to do before we get to it, because his life to me, he's one of my heroes as far as the Bible goes, because he's just a normal guy. He had his weaknesses. But just looking at him like that, that's great. But what's most interesting and what God would want us to realize is God reveals himself and his character to us, right? Because when Abraham fails, God's compassion comes in, right? And God's promises would not fail. But also, each individual person is different. I'm different. My dad, David's different. And Melissa's different. Everybody's different. The way God deals with different people is totally different. He just doesn't deal with somebody the same way. So it shows to me how God can be a teacher, and how God can correct, and how God can bring somebody along and nurture them. Abraham was an example like that. But as you know, back in 12, there's this promise to leave his country, leave his relatives. But actually, this happens when he's in his land of his birth, Ur of the Chaldees. While chapter 11 chronicles his journey from that, but actually this happens when he's in there. And it's not until, this is an interesting point, it's not until Terah, his father, dies that he actually leaves Haran and he comes into the land of Canaan. And the father, there's some implication that the father was in the way, but eventually he leaves. He leaves this country. He follows what the Lord has asked up until a certain point. There's somewhat of an obedience, right? He doesn't completely separate himself from his relatives, not until chapter 13 when he leaves Lot. But there's this progression, right? And right when he gets into Canaan, guess what happens? And as we look, as a believer, as we're offering, as we present the gospel to people, we don't tell them that, well, you're going to have the greatest. And as there is a false gospel out there, well, you're going to have lots of money. You're never going to get sick. You're never going to have hard times. Quite different, right? And what it is God is nurturing, and as Abraham is an example, and teaching, and bringing him closer, and training Abraham, but he's training us as well. Right off the bat, he gets in the land. You think, wow, this is going to be great, right? Here's the land God's going to give me. What happens? Famine. Hardship. What does Abraham do? This is something that we can learn from. He leaves the land, the place where God told him to go. He leaves the place of blessing, and he leaves it. And does that have ramifications? Whether I make choices for good or whether I make bad choices, there's consequences for both. There were definite consequences because of Abraham's choice to go to Egypt. We see in this chapter that there is a person, while we don't want to make her into some kind of cartoon character because she is a real-life person, but she comes from that experience. Hagar, Egyptian maid. Here comes another test. We had one when with the famine. Here comes another test with, well, he's delivered the entire possessions, the entire, as it were, riches of the land. Is Abraham going to take it? Maybe he's thinking in his mind, well, this is it. God's delivered it to me. Well, you know, it says that the king of Sodom comes out to meet him. But before that, there's just a couple verses about this man Melchizedek. And it says, and Melchizedek. And so God intervenes, right? He sends his servant Melchizedek, and he brings memorials. He reminds Abraham, listen, it's not you that got this victory. It's possessor. He learns a new term by a new attribute of God. And he learns this name. It says, possessor of heaven and earth. He didn't know God before that as that. He was God Almighty to him, but now he's possessor of heaven and earth. Abraham, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. Did that equip Abraham for the test to come? Absolutely, because then the king of Sodom says, take the goods for yourself, give me the people, right? Here's the temptation. God's promised me the land. Am I going to be patient and wait on him, or am I going to take it for myself? Right? Am I going to wait for God to bring it about, or I'm going to take it in my own hands, in my own power? He says, no thank you, right? He denied, he passes that test, and he learns that God is the possessor of heaven and earth. When he's going to fulfill the promises, that's when it's going to come. He's God, there's further revelation. And that's something for us, right? You wonder sometimes why some Christians never grow, because they stay in this state of, you know, being maybe young in the Lord. Well, there's not enough faith practice, and there's not enough light revealed because they haven't shown that. But Abraham is an example to us too, as we're growing, right? We're giving ourselves to God to work on us and to turn things over to Him. And as we do that, He reveals more and more light to us. The same was with Abraham. And so He tells him that you're going to have a son, but it's going to come from your own body. It's not going to be somebody that you think is going to be the heir. It's going to come from your own body. At this point, he's about 86 years old. And so we come to 16, and immediately right off the bat, you would think, here it comes, here comes another test. And this, I labeled this first section as a test of patience. We had a test of will God provide with the famine. And then we had a test of maybe this is me to take the land by force, right? Here's the possessions. God's delivered it to me. The entire land's possessions. No, Abraham puts it aside. But here comes the test every one, right? And so what is she going to do? Well, the frustration that she has from her own marital problems, she's going to take it out now on Hagar. And so Hagar, we're going to look at our next thing, is we have this interaction with God and Hagar. But this is, I titled this, the next three are about the Lord. It's the God who sees and the God who seeks, or seeks. And so Sarah treated her harshly. She runs from her presence. And it says this in 17, and it's very interesting because she also has this interaction with the angel of the Lord in 21, but it's from a different place. It says that the angel of the Lord found her by the spring of water in the wilderness, on the spring on the way to shore. As if God is looking around for her, right? That's the picture. Can God see everything? Or can anybody hide from the Lord? No. It says in Hebrews that all things are laid bare before His eyes. But it's as if here's Hagar running away from her life, not really looking for anything, just trying to get away from the problem, and there's God going after her. Right? That's a picture, that's a real testimony, that's a praise to our God, right? That He goes after people. He's seeking. And it says He found her. He found her by this place, spring of water, this place of life. And the question is interesting too. It says, Hagar, this is the angel of the Lord speaking, where have you come from and where are you going? And oftentimes we read about God having these conversations as if He doesn't know the answer. He does know the answer. But what is it that He wants? He wants people he's moving people to get them where they need to be, right? Humble before him, as he asks Adam, Adam, where are you? As he's walking through the garden after that sin happened. It's not that, some bush is going to hide him from the Almighty, right? No, he knew where Hagar came from because he was looking for her. But he says, where have you come from and where are you going? Where is it that you're trying to get away to? You're trying to run from your problems, come back to me. That's the application for us. Sometimes when we have these hardships, we're like, I'm getting out of here as quick as I can, right? Things aren't going right, I'm going to run, right? Things are not going good at the church, I have some disagreements with some people, I'm going somewhere else. But what happens? When you leave somewhere, generally, your problems are coming with you, right? It's not the problems with other people, sometimes it's within. It's within, we got to look within. And that's the general reaction, is when the lights shine upon me, I'm going to run to the corner, I'm going to kick and punch and do everything to get it out from away from me, right? And so the human reaction is to get away. But the Lord says, where have you come from and where are you going? All his brothers. And this is where we get this section from in verse 13. And because this is an experience where she actually sees him. This is not something where she doesn't not see the angel of the Lord. But it says this. It says, thou art a God who sees. For she said, have I even remained here after seeing him? And, sometimes we think as we're going through these hard problems and, nobody sees what's going on in my life. God doesn't care about me. I don't know if you ever said that. God doesn't care what's going on with me. He doesn't see me at work in the way people treat me. Or, they don't see the way my brother and sister, what they do. My parents don't see it and they're not giving me justice. God doesn't see this. God does see, right? And it says here that thou art a God who sees. And interesting, not only does he see, but he wants to be seen. He wants to have interaction with us. It says, have I even remained here after seeing him? She understood that she was not in the right by leaving too. But here's God that appears to her, and here she is still alive. The compassion of God, right? Have I even remained here after seeing him? Have I even remained alive? I should have been swept away. But it says, it reveals the compassion of our God. Have I even remained alive here after seeing him? And then, significant, as often as we're going through this book, certain places in the Bible, they have meaning, right? Bethel, the house of God. We get that from Jacob later, we're going to find out, where he met, where the ladder is. But here, it says here in verse 14 that the well is called Bir Lahai Roy, which literally means the well of the living one who sees me. So while she was looking for life, she went to the well, right? In the desert, there's no life. She goes to a place where she thinks is life. She doesn't find it. The living one finds her there, right? And so the well of the living one who sees me. And so while she's looking around for life, she finds it in the living one, not in the well, but she finds it in the living one. And so we're moving right along. We'll try to get through most of this. But in verse 21, we'll start right away. The Lord took note. This is chapter 21. This is God progress his promises, and he will do them. And so we leave our hero of faith here in 34. Abraham sojourned in the land of Philistines for many days. And so what motivated Abraham to keep going in the Christian life? The everlasting God. What motivates me and you to keep living? Not just, Christian friends and fellowship. That's great. That is very important. But it's the everlasting God. And so make sure that your focus, right, and your attention, your faith is placed in God, the everlasting God, because he is the one that gives you success. He is the one that will enable you to live the Christian life. He is the one that enabled Abraham to live, to keep sojourning in the land where there was no resources. It wasn't his own land, but he went on living in that land because he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And so let's close in a word of prayer.